Top of the morning, folks. Today from the Reddit Rainforest. I escaped from a county jail when I was 17 years old in 2006. What stories do you rarely tell? Because nobody will believe you. Got a hole in one while golfing on my own. The best and worst day of my life. I'm a living witness to something known as the McMasterville explosion. So, the paint company made explosives. Their explosives factory, which was a giant factory on the same grounds as the paint making factory. One night the whole thing blew up. I was looking right at it when it went. Not just the explosives, but thousands of gallons of flammable liquids from other parts of the factory all went up at once. It was estimated to have the power of a 1 kiloton explosion. I lived on the side of a mountain called Mount St. Hilaire, a little over a mile away, looking down at the factory site. When you see an explosion like that from a distance, the land ripples like water. Like when you drop a stone in water. I was riding a bike. The ground shook me first, then the air blast knocked me on my butt. The factory was deliberately sunk into the ground and surrounded by a high trench wall in case it ever blew up, so the nearby town of Oil wouldn't get leveled. So the explosive force got punched into the ground and the factory was blown straight up in the air. Tons of wreckage rained down for miles. No one I know of was hit by anything, but many small fires were started all over the place. My next door neighbor found a train wheel in his backyard, and it was red hot when he found it. That my father was arrested for stealing $100K worth of Hershey Kisses, and during his time in jail I found out that he was not my biological father. My biological father owned a chain of restaurants that I frequented as a kid and teenager. I found this all out a few weeks after my 18th birthday. Were the Hershey's actually diamonds? I don't know. Literally a truckload of Hershey Kisses. Why did he need that many Hershey Kisses? Long story short, he took them and sold them to a local grocery store in Maryland. I live in central PA. I was 6 years old, and my parents took my family down to Disney World. Yay. On the flight down, the pilot made an announcement that if you looked out the window, you could see the space shuttle launching. It was kind of far away, but I could definitely see it in a plume of smoke. Very cool. We land in Orlando, and everyone is dead silent, glued to the TVs. It was the Challenger, and it exploded on launch. I saw the Challenger explode. I won millions of dollars in the lottery about 15 years ago and kept it secret. I did not change my lifestyle much, except to buy a modest house and new, used car. I waited a few years to quit my job. I did not tell a single soul that had won, including family. The only people who know are my accountant and lawyer. I think this is the smart thing to do. When I was about 5 years old, I drove from Mass to Virginia with my family. Upon arrival, my legs just would not work. Eventually my parents took me to the hospital. I went through various testing before being diagnosed with a flesh-eating bacteria. They wanted to amputate. Not sure if the procedure was ever scheduled, but my legs healed magically overnight. Turns out my blood sample got contaminated. What really happened was I had sat on my legs the whole car ride there. 15 years later, and I have retained all appendages thus far. I'd hope they would. Yeah, no. Test twice before removing your legs. Measure twice. Cut once. My brother and I made a fake earthquake video and convinced several TV stations of its authenticity. I had just gotten home from work and was wasting time on the computer. I felt a rumble like a dump truck driving nearby, but it continued for a while and became even more intense. Nothing crazy. I do not live in an area of the world with a lot of seismic activity, but it was strong for the area. Maybe a 6.2. Of course my brother runs out of his room to ask me if I had felt it, and in passing, said it was too bad he did not catch it on video. My brother at this point was obsessed with YouTube videos. He had his own channel with his small amount of followers, and was always recording himself or anything else. Then I came up with the brilliant idea of faking it. We started recording one of his typical videos. I shook the camera slightly, nothing crazy, just enough to be convincing. He then said something like "What's that?" runs to grab the camera, and runs outside. All while the camera shake of simply walking was more than enough. We added some earthquake sound effects we found online, posted it on YouTube, and then it exploded. We would refresh the page, and almost instantly it maximumed out at about 330 views. Then the phone started ringing. It was the Weather Network. It was CTV. It was TV stations in the city and out. It was the CBC. They were all asking for permission to use the video, to which we very enthusiastically agreed. Then the interview started. My brother chickened out doing an over-the-phone interview with a weather network. So I impersonated him over the phone. They actually made a comment about recalculating the length of the earthquake based on our video, as what we had seemed to be a few seconds longer than what they had thought had actually happened. CTV simply ran the video without an interview. CBC requested an in-person interview that night. So with convincing and lots of it, my brother and I busted down to the CBC building downtown, and my brother did an interview with Connect with Mark Kelly. It was a quick and awkward interview, but was worth it. We had officially trolled one of the biggest news broadcasters in the country. Oh. And the video got about 1/3 views, and very briefly appeared first on the most viewed page. This was a few years back though, so I do not know if that many views would get to #1 anymore. I went to college at Belmont University in Nashville from 1999 until 2002. While I was there I worked for record labels, as did a lot of my friends who were all in the music business program. Well, one buddy worked for a label called Red Hill Records as an intern/gopher/indentured servant. So, on occasion we would go to events and meet industry people and artists, as this was a small label. They had an artist that we became friends with named Catty Hudson, who was a singer-songwriter and about 17 years old. We hung out all the time, since we were just 18 ourselves and had nothing to do but study and bum around coffee shops. As our friendship developed, my roommate developed a huge crush on her. She never seemed to reciprocate the feelings, so I asked her what was wrong with him. You know, trying to be a good friend. And she revealed that she liked me instead of him. So, since I wanted to be a good friend, I had to turn her down because of his feelings for her. That girl went on to be Katy Perry. I'm a larky, you not. I was busted by the D for manufacturing ecstasy at the age of 21. The feds told me I was the youngest person in US history to be indicted for the offense. I'm 29 now. That I touched the Texas execution bed. I went to school in Huntsville, TX. One day my sophomore year, I took a prison tour of the Walls unit. This is not where death row is, but it is where the execution chamber is. It was this tiny, teal room, and there was a dozen of us standing around the bed. They talked for a while about the execution process and where the families sit, etc. But I was not paying attention. I was just staring at this bed where hundreds of people were killed. When everybody was walking out of the room, I reached down and touched the bed where the prisoners' heads would be. A guard yelled at me to not do that, and then we all went along our way. It was a very chilling moment, and I hope that I never have to be in that room ever again. I once partied with Steve-O from Jackass, before Jackass was even a thing. Circa 1997. He was cool, but crazy as duck. In one evening he taught me how to roll a double joint, told me a story about his life in the circus, and broke into an apartment complex for a midnight swim. To top off the evening, he lit himself on fire and jumped off a 3-story roof of the complex into a 4 feet deep pool. I almost never tell people this story because it sounds totally made up, but I was not the only one there. Thing is, I'm not in touch with any of the other people that were there who could corroborate. Spun out in heavy rain on the interstate. When my car finally stopped, it was facing an oncoming semi. I had only a few seconds to put my Honda in park and turn the ignition back on. For some reason it shut off and pulled off the road. When I first looked up and saw the semi, I calmly grumbled to myself, "Are you ducking serious?" Because I have always thought I was a pretty good driver and was surprised this is how I was going to die. Nobody believes that is how I reacted the few times I have told the story. They assume I was probably panicking or freaking out. Really, the most frightening thing about the moment was realizing I'm not that afraid of death. I got a hooker to sleep with me for free. There are multiple reasons I do not tell that story. A friend of mine was counting out hundreds of pennies. Without thinking, I blurted out something like 784. I was right. Oh. Back in college, I had to stop seeing a girl because she turned out to be crazy. Seriously crazy. Candy and I went on half a dozen dates, and then I did not hear from her for a couple of days. She finally showed up at school, and I asked her where she'd been. I threw a guy out the window. She laughs. She had a nice body and would frequently be the target of sexual harassment because of it. She had great curves and was extremely fit and athletic. There was a group of frat boy stereotypes that would constantly yell things at her, make obscene gestures at her, and generally do all they could to make her life a living hell. One day, these guys stopped her on the stairs and started harassing her again. The leader of the idiots, who we shall call Douche, decided to take things to the next level and grab her breasts. Big mistake. She grabbed him by his popped collar and tossed him out the window. Fortunately, it was open. Douche went through the screen and fell about 20 feet. He lived, but was pretty banged up. She tells me this story, and I ask why she was not in prison. Oh, he decided not to press charges. Douche hated her because they used to date and had gone through a bad breakup. However, he was afraid to press charges against her because she had their last lover-making session on video. Why is he so afraid of his friends seeing him having sex? I ask. It's not like they do not know you used to date. She laughs again. Well. Do you know what pegging is? I took revenge on a rapist by stabbing him in the ear with a Q-tip. He assaulted a friend of mine who repeatedly told him to stop. He touched her, then he pinned her, then he raped her. She has not recovered since, and even came to distrust her closest friends. She told me his name. And I hunted him. I learned where he worked, where he lived, his schedule. In between my work shifts, I would catch up to him and keep tabs. I did this for 2 weeks. When he got out of work one night, I was waiting. He did not hear me slip up behind him, and I put the Q-tip into his right ear and slammed it in with my palm. You will not believe the blood, the shrieking. I could not move. I just watched him writhing. We were alone. No one was around to help him or catch me. I finally gathered my wits and ran like hell. I burned the clothes, gloves, and ski mask I had been wearing. I never made a sound, so he could not identify my voice. And as much as I thought I was going to drop the one line "learn to listen," I held back, so he could not tell the police any sort of motive. The girl was never questioned and neither was I, and as best I know, his hearing is totally destroyed in his right ear. I have no regrets. I also never tell the story. I do not think anyone would believe it. But more importantly, I do not want anyone to know, nor do I really want to know the consequences of my social status if people did believe it. If you are reading this, you made it until the end of the video. Click the thumbs up button since you made it until the end. On screen there should be some more videos similar to this. So either go do something else or watch another video. That's it. There is no more here. What are you waiting for, a secret message or something? Okay. This is not a secret, but subscribe for more Reddit videos like this.